Sanjay Jasrani is a founder and CEO of Go North Ventures. Go North is an angel investment and advisory firm focused on investing in and mentoring startups. It also provides strategy inputs to high growth energy stage companies and SMPs moving to their next orbit. Sanjay, an active member of the Indian Angel Network, the premier national group of angel investors, has investments in startups across the healthcare, education, impact, customer, and fintech sectors. A charter member at TAI Hyderabad, he is also a member of the Executive Council of IIT Hyderabad Foundation and an independent director on board of Unimed Health. A TEDx speaker, he has covered new perspectives around startups and finance for women. He was the Executive Vice President and Head Global Delivery Center, Hitachi Consulting Limited. As CEO and Head of the Global Delivery Center at India, he led the company's global delivery team of 1,800 plus across centers at Hyderabad, Pune, and Bangalore. So he's worked a lot with Hitachi over the years, and Sanjay brings over 20 years of solid execution experience from his previous role at Sierra Atlantic as a CFO, Asia and China. Prior to Sierra Atlantic, he ran a family-owned industrial venture and led a successful chartered accountancy practice. He holds a bachelor's degree in commerce and a fellow member of the Indian Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. A keen golfer, book lover, art enthusiast, he is also the co-founder and an active member at one of Hyderabad's pioneering book clubs, Turn the Page. Welcome, Sanjay, from Hyderabad.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jijo. I'm very happy to be here.
And I think I need to introduce Shilan first because he is my senior from NIT Calicut. You know how the senior thing works. So, Saju, sorry, let me get Shilan out there first. Shilan is the CEO and founder of SS Consulting. He has held different roles like engineering scientist, software designer to chief executive across diverse and innovative domains like aerospace engineering, engineering research, media research, and information technology. He is founded a captive subsidiary of an international US-based company, Arbitron, grew it to one of the high-performing companies in India, which has been acclaimed industry recognitions. As the CEO, Shilan led the development of a high-performing team, creating an accountability-driven culture with emphasis on gender diversity, flexible workplace practices, which successfully enables complex systems development for company, designing the optimum processes to ensure high-quality deliverables in schedule and cost. Demonstrated the ability to recognize the individual strengths of team members and strive to fully engage and utilize those strengths to align and position organization for growth and success. And he's responsible for the creation of more than 5,000 technology jobs in Kerala, which has been recognized by the community. He's a non-executive director of responsible for organization, transformation, and strategic planning of the largest cooperative society in Asia, whose primary focus is on employment generation, ULCC. Sheila and I know him very personally and very active member in most of the forums. And welcome you, Shilan, to the panel. Saju James is a partner at Fragomen Immigration Services India Private Limited. Saju James leads the India practice consisting of India inbound, India outbound services. He also heads the global back office operations based out of Kochi and our representative offices in Hyderabad and New Delhi. Prior to his promotion to partner, Saju served as the country leader of Fragomen's operations in India from 2006 to 2010. Saju has more than 20 years of experience in human resources and global immigration. Prior to joining Fragment, he held a number of positions within Asia's largest IT services and solution organizations, including Director of HR for America's division of TCS, I believe, from 2004 to 2006, Global Head of HR for a subsidiary from 2002 to 2004, Head of Immigration and Legal Compliance in North America from 1998 to 2002. Saju is a frequent speaker at international conferences on Indian, US, and global immigration issues. Saju, welcome. I think we have a great panel, and team building is my area of passion as well. And one thing, just to give a quick introduction about all three of them, Sanjay comes with a chartered accountant experience. Saju comes out with an immigration-related experience, building big companies. And Sheelan comes out with engineering and in different areas, mechanical, aeronautical, and if you talk about space research, because he spent his time in VSSC, he gets really passionate, and you can see the light in his face actually. So it's like a very diverse kind of area of expertise out here. First of all, I think it may be good to hear from really building teams, how, whether it's Hitachi or Arbitron or Fragment, how did they build their organization right from scratch? And maybe let's start with Sanjay. Sanjay, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jijo. Just to clarify, I was the head of Hitachi Consulting India and not Hitachi India, which is a larger organization. So just to get it off the table. So I joined Sierra Atlantic, which later on became Hitachi Consulting via an acquisition. I joined this company way back in 1994. I was in practice as a CA when they came to me for some advice. And I had this wonderful opportunity to join a company which was all of 10 people strong. It was 100K US dollars in revenue. And when I left them 20 years later, we had grown to $100 million in revenue. We were 2,000 plus people, and we had become part of $1 billion company, Hitachi Consulting, which was a subsidiary of Hitachi Limited, the $100 billion company. So it was an amazing journey. I think for a lot of our friends out here, we were the classic small company. And way back then, Hyderabad was pretty much like what Kochi is today. It was quite an unknown small city. And I think there were a few things which we did right in this whole scaling process. Right from the word go, interestingly, we had two founders, one who was in charge of the India Development Center. The other co-founder was based out of the Valley, Milpitas. He had worked at Intel earlier. Both of them were classmates at BITS Pilani. So we were a global startup to begin with. We were a small company, but we were global from the word go. We had this one founder who was very close to the markets, very well connected in the entire West Coast environment. In fact, Raju Reddy, he was the founder. He's been very active. He's among the early founders of TIE. And Mr. Kanwal Rekhi was on our board. So we were blessed in many ways to have that level of mentorship. So what we did in India was, when I joined the company, I joined as the chief financial officer. We actually went public in India as a very small company. As 100K revenue company, we went public. The purpose was to build a brand from an HR perspective, because we were a very small company, in terms of size, in terms of the brand itself. So we went public. We raised a small amount of capital, all of 1.5 crore Indian rupees at that point of time. But we were listed on the Mumbai Stock Exchange and the National Stock Exchange. And from there, we grew all the way over this period to a $100 million company. I think what we realized was that if you are small, that need not be a disadvantage at all. This was a classic, David versus Goliath story. I think there are several advantages which you can leverage as a small compact company. And those were aspects which really helped us in terms of reaching out to the right people, in terms of talent acquisition, in terms of lots of wonderful innovative practices which we could adopt right from the word go. And actually, we used to tell our customers that we earn our team members, we don't buy our team members. Because at the point at which we got acquired by Hitachi, I was speaking to my global CEO, and one of the points I was telling him that we were sitting in Gachibowli in our own campus, having started from a 1,500 square foot leased office in a place called Ameerpet in Hyderabad. We were then in a 7.5 acre campus of our own, in a 200,000 square feet owned facility. But like I was mentioning to my global CEO, we were sitting within a mile of 500,000 IT employees. On one side, there were the large MNC product companies. There was Oracle, Microsoft, Siebel, you name it. On the other side, MNC Consulting, Capgemini, Accenture, all the big guys. And on the third side were the Indian Big Four. But sitting as a small company in the center of all this, we managed to attract and retain some of the finest talent and actually build this company, which we were really proud of. I'll stop here in interest of time and hand it back.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sanjay. Saju, how about you?
Good afternoon. So thank you for having me here. A quick story about myself. I started in the corporate world. I was with TCS. Most of my corporate career, I started as a trainee with TCS in Delhi. Moved to Mumbai and Bangalore, was there for many years. I was fortunate to be selected to head corporate immigration and HR for TCS in 1998. That was quite early for me at that time. I was new to immigration, but then got to move to Washington in the year 1998. Been there for 5 years, came back to head CMC in India for the worldwide practice. Again, moved back to the US to head HR for TCS in the US. This was in 2004 to 2006. That was when the entrepreneurial bug hit me, and I thought, why not look at immigration as a career and look at opportunities in India, because there was not many companies in India supporting corporates on the immigration side. And then the thought came in, and I discussed this with our current chairman of Fragaman, whose name is Austin Fragaman. And his question was, Saju, if you are setting up this operation in India, where do you want to do it? My answer was Kochi. So his question was, Kochi, is it in India? Today, we are known as Fragaman Kochi and not as Fragaman India. And I'm proud that we set up the operations in Kochi itself. We started in a 1,000 square feet office in 2006. Today we have close to 100,000 square feet space in InfoPark. And that was my dream, to get into InfoPark one day. We support close to 650 employees, support close to 80% of the Fortune 500 companies on the immigration side. Again, it's worldwide immigration. Again, I think I'll stop here and then probably pass it on to Seelan before.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. I was a senior to Jijo, even though I had not seen him, So after that, I went for my master's. I was a mechanical engineer from REC Calicut, now NIT Calicut, and then I did my master's from IIT Bombay, specializing in jet propulsion. So then I was teaching there for some time, and then I joined Vikram Sarabhai Space Center as an engineering scientist. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Shivan, who is currently the chairman, and I was very happy with that. And then, so I was there for around 9 years working on reusable space transportation system as an aerospace systems engineer. So then I decided to take a break. I went to US and joined a media analytics company called Arbitron. Arbitron was probably around, it's a 90-year-old company. It's based in Washington, D.C., near Washington, D.C. And then I joined as a technology architect, as a techie. But within a couple of years, I got sucked into management. So I was in the senior management of Arbitron, responsible for the product development and also as their head of global delivery. So the company was a private company, and then I was involved in the process of taking it to public in the New York Stock Exchange. So I was there for around 9 years, and then we were trying to figure out what to do, whether to be there or come back, and then finally decided to come back to India. So I came back in 2006, and I was looking about what to do here, and then I saw some of the pioneers in Cochin. One was Jijo, and the other one was our friend Mugunt. So they told me that, this is a good place to start something. So we started small. The thing is, my first employee was an HR guy. Because what I strongly believe that for any of the people, for any of the knowledge business, the people is the key for that. So we had set up a very interesting human resource model. The thing is, I remember we had programs for paid internship. Maybe it's the first time a company has offered paid internship to students. This must be in 2006, 2007 period. So we used to have relationship with some of the good colleges like NIT Calicut, Model Engineering College, Rajagiri, or even IIM Kozhikode. We used to get students in their final year and then offer them paid internship, which could be a pathway for their employment. So that was one thing which we did. And we grew the company to around 300 employees, 300 plus employees. And we were in a very high technology product area of media analytics. So I could actually attract people across the world, across India, to come and be part of even though as Sanjay was mentioning, small is sweet sometimes. So we had the advantages of being small, and we were able to do this. And the company was doing extremely well. And as Saju was mentioning earlier, this Cochin thing. So we were known as Arbitron Kochi, not Arbitron India in that sense. So this Kochi became a big brand across US. And whenever our US people came here, they were surprised. They were very happy they used to come here as a vacation. You can see all the greenery here. And then, so typically they come in during November to February time frame. So then in 2013, our company got acquired by Nielsen. Nielsen is the world's biggest media research company. And then I was a part of that thing. And then the transition, it took around a couple of years to complete the transition. So after that, I took a break. I went for teaching again for some time. And then I started a consulting company called SS Consulting, into management consulting. And also we have started a technology incubator in Malabar, in Kannur, which is called Malabar Innovation Zone. So I am the chairman of that. It's a non-profit Section 8 company. So we have around 50 startups there. And also we started a local angel network, supported by Indian Angel Network, which is called as the Malabar Angels. So that is the summary. I'll stop here, sir.
Thanks, Shilan. That is a wide spectrum of experience, I would say. And I think Arbitron at that time was one of the most recognized company, especially in Kochi. We used to all adore the HR practices of how Arbitron was making employees happy. I think he has won a lot of awards for the same. And from that to incubation centers to being an investor, great job still. But I know everything won't be smooth when you are starting companies, and so maybe it's a good idea to hear some of the challenges. And for Sanjay, I think I'll ask about in the general what kind of challenges they were facing, and maybe Saju and Shilan could talk more about the Kerala-related challenges, because that's an entirely different ball game out here in Kerala. Sanjay, how about anything you faced, or what kind of?
No, certainly. Thanks, Jijo. Yeah, I think in our growth journey, there were different stages, and I like to compare it to, say, climbing Mount Everest, right? So there's base camp 1, base camp 2, base camp 3. At every level, the altitude changes. Every level, your preparation, your training, your equipment, the Sherpas you need actually change. So it was very interesting. As we grew as a company, as Sierra Atlantic, we were at a stage where we were about $25-30 million revenue. And this is an anecdote I'm sharing, which is about risk management, right? So we actually took on a very large customer, which we were very happy about. So this was a US-based enterprise product company, a very successful company. We were working on the product development for them. We were pretty much working on the crown jewels of that company. So we were required to set up a large dedicated center for them for the product development. And we built like a 250-member team in a separate sort of building, which was secure, it was CCT covered. In fact, even the number of papers in the printer would be counted before and after. That level of security was part of what we were doing. And we were working with them on a global basis. So on the US side, with the US company, we had a bunch of colleagues working on this product development. We had close to 200 plus colleagues on the offshore side working on this development. And at one point, this customer was about 30% of our company's revenues. So what happened was there were certain developments going on at the customer side, and for whatever reason, the learning, the takeaway from here was that how do you build a large account, how do you build that relationship, how do you scale it, and how do you keep multiple points of contact within a large customer like that, and how do you de-risk by ensuring that you don't have such a large percentage of your revenue with one customer. So at one point, we had delays in our payment, and we were like 3 months overdue on the payable, and 25% of our revenues 3 months overdue was actually beginning to get very difficult from a cash flow perspective. So internally, the leadership team, we had to take a call to say that we can't carry on like this. And if you see a lot of the bank issues today and a lot of an entrepreneur's journey is about ensuring that you actually manage risk well. It's not about being defensive. But when you get an opportunity, do not overextend to to crossing a limit where you actually probably get mortally hurt and die. That's very important in a growth journey. So with this customer, for whatever internal reasons, partly political, they didn't have a financial issue, but they were delaying our payments. So one fine day, we actually went back to our customer exec contact and told them that if we do not get our payment within 1 week, we have no choice, but we will be forced to stop the project. And the customer didn't believe us. They thought that there was no way a small partner like us would do something like that. So the week went by, and on Monday, we called off our teams. We actually stopped development. The good news is, it was a tough bluff to call. The good news is, within 2 days, we got 50% of our overdue payment, and we came back to normalcy. But the lesson which we took away from that anecdote was, in a growth journey, you have to understand your limits, you have to manage risk well, and you have to manage relationships well. So that's my quick takeaway. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ajay. Saju, anything Kerala specific you faced, or in general as well?
Again, thank you, Jijo, for asking. On the Kerala side, I would say risk is the price you pay for the opportunity. When I chose Kerala, the risks, I was very clear and aware of the risks associated with having an enterprise in Kerala. And the biggest one was how to deal with hartals and strikes. Having a worldwide operations, having 40 offices worldwide, and supporting all of them 24/7, there was no option for you to close down your office while hartals and bands were there. We were looking at ways on how to get our staff into office, irrespective of what happens outside. And without providing uninterrupted support, we knew that this model will not succeed. I started with one office support for our global office, and today we are supporting all of the Fragment offices worldwide, which is roughly 40 offices in 24 countries, and extended countries of 170 locations beyond that. So what we've done is really getting our staff into office during those days when strikes were there before 6 in the morning, and we have buses flying all over the city to pick up our staff. We have evening after 6, there are buses being sent to drop our employees back at home. Again, over the last 12 years, we have not lost one single working day in Kerala. And one of the questions I faced within the first 3-4 months or 6 months was, Saju, you never told us that Kerala is a communist state. And that was definitely something which was in my mind, and I wanted to make sure that we would not have any loss of working days which would impact the business worldwide, and probably an option to look at other locations other than Kochi was also there. But then being able to provide that uninterrupted support, we were able to retain most of the work here. That was one. And the second biggest challenge was to attract and train people and retain them. We seriously looked at career opportunities. We were lucky, we were fortunate that we were growing year on year. We grew from a 5-member, 10-member team in the first year in 2006 to 650-member team now. We were also able to place our staff abroad in our 40 locations where, as and when we get better opportunities, we were able to place our senior folks on a permanent posting in each of these countries. So that was a career option for our employees. For the last 12 years, I'm proud to say that I have not lost even a single direct reportees of me from the organization. We had a 14-member team which was hired from organizations like Infosys, TCS, Mindtree, most of them the technology companies who were holding senior positions in HR, people who have returned from the US holding similar positions. All of them are still staying with the firm and they're all handling higher responsibilities. Some of them have moved to our global operations, managing key positions within the firm. So I think overall the story is that irrespective of what the odds are, there are ways to manage it, but then you need to have the will and you need to get the support of the people who are there with you to make that happen.
Totally agree, Saju. I mean, the stability of teams, I think that is something I personally feel good also, being in Kerala. And our experience has been wonderful actually, having stable people in the company. And I'm sure Shilan will have some interesting stories also. Shilan?
Yeah, I will pick on this communist subject, because I hail from Kannur, and you know that Kannur is known for all the, all the notorious things which happened there. Even though the guys from Kannur will not agree for that. So the story is like this. So I went and convinced my management that Kochi is this wonderful place for starting this product development thing. Even though when I visited here, we had probably around 5,000 5,000 jobs, IT jobs in Cochin. So that was the state now. I think we are around 35,000 now. So that was the state. So I went and sold this idea. But at that time, what happened? Our CEO, he came on a on a personal trip to Bangalore, and he had a chance to visit Infosys, the big center in Mysore. So he went and met the CEO at that time. It was a CEO trip from the US. Okay. So and then he mentioned, he was told proudly that we are planning to do something in India and we are going to plan doing something in Kerala. So the CEO at that time, I don't want to tell the name, told that the thing is, will anyone set up something in Kerala? That place has got a lot of labor problems, and also that is ruled by a communist government. Okay, so it was like a big bomb thrown at me. So now I had to tell the story that, what is the difference between the communists in Kerala and communists in China and communists in Russia or communists in Cuba? What is the difference here? And so we have got a communist, democratically elected communist government. And I told him that I was also a communist sympathizer before I came to US. And also some rational things like, this communist mindset is a bit of a rationalistic mindset, okay? And you need people with a rationalistic mindset to do something creative. So you will get more creative people. That was my rationale. And it took a bit of convincing for me to tell the American management, that this is a great place. So that was the thing, and it was a very tough discussion. And then finally I told that, either you make me run this thing or you get someone else to do this job. So I am from this place, I know how this works. So you let me do in fact I had to tell this to my CEO. Luckily everything worked out well. So the thing is, the Hartal was a problem at that time, as Saji was mentioning, because that gives a lot of negative publicity. And one very interesting thing which I would like to say is that I've been instrumental in getting a large company, IT services company, which has got around 4,000 people in Cochin. And so I had a very hard time to convince them why their CEO at that time to convince that, why they should come here. And he was very reluctant, but finally agreed because, we were giving a piece of contract to them. But the interesting thing is that if they look at their centers across India, so they have got around 200,000 people in India. So if you look at the metrics in Cochin, they are far superior to the metrics in what is there in other states because there are, what we have been doing is that we have been using technology to deal with Bandh, Hartal. So what we do is that if there's a Hartal day, we give employees laptops so that they can work from home. Okay, so or maybe if it's something which we have to do from the office, maybe because this Hartal activities will get ready only around 10 o'clock. So at that time we have a commute, we get the employees around 7 o'clock in the morning and get them home. So effectively, I don't think we have lost a single day due to Hartal. So this was one thing which is I would say very special to Kerala, and also which gives a lot of negative branding also. The other thing which I found is, which is Saju has, my friend is talking about Kerala specific thing is on, because one of the things which we see is that when you recruit people, especially from Kerala, this Malayalam language is an issue because the whole culture is around Malayalam. So when you are having a global system, we need to have people, because there have been instances where people have come from other states and they felt a bit alienated because of this language thing. So we have to ensure that the people speak English. So, and we got a lot of people outside Kerala. So one of our requirement is that, especially when someone is coming to senior management, they should have either be out of Kerala or they should have spent some significant time outside Kerala so that we build this sort of a multi-language culture in the organization.
Thanks, you. Sanjay, why don't we get into one of the questions I was always looking for.
Sure.
Regarding government support, and we hear a lot that, in Hyderabad, or Andhra, you used to get a lot of government support. Even other companies are coming to invest in Andhra Pradesh. The government goes out of the way to help out. What are your experience?
No, certainly, Jijo. I think as most of you know, we had the benefit of Mr. Chandrababu Naidu as the Chief Minister during really good days. And I think he was quite instrumental. There is a story that he went and sat outside Bill Gates' office without an appointment, and he waited for 8 hours. And then Bill Gates relented and met him, and he agreed to open their largest center outside of their headquarters in Hyderabad. So starting with that to the fact that Hyderabad has several centers of excellence, if I may call, whether on the engineering side or on the business side, in terms of having the Indian School of Business, which is a top 20 business school today. We now have IIIT Hyderabad, which is an amazing school for computer science. All the graduates get snapped away on day 0 by some of the finest companies. So I think the government did a great job with IIT Hyderabad now. We have BITS Pilani, we have Mahindra Ecole, we have Nalsar, the top college for law. So there was the educational infrastructure, and AP Telangana have traditionally been very strong on the engineering side. Also, interestingly, I think the government used the sort of land policy very well in terms of employment generation. So the whole area which is now high-tech city, some of you who may be familiar, high-tech city and now Gachibowli, that area was largely owned by the government, or they acquired the land and they actually gave away land to companies who were serious about setting up their offices and actually going live quickly, not just sitting on the land. So they had, like every acre, they had a large amount of subsidy, and you were supposed to create about 500 jobs per acre. So that's how Infosys, Wipro, all the big guys came in. Today, Deloitte has probably 50,000 employees in Hyderabad, HSBC, you name it. So I think the government played an active role, Jijo. And largely, like with the IT sector, the point was that you set up the infrastructure, you encourage the industry, and you stay out of the way. I think that's the key. Yeah.
Great. I think let's take that question.
Okay, yeah.
There's somebody.
My question is to Mr. Saju. Before entering into the question, let me congratulate you for getting so many awards and appreciation for your CSR projects throughout India. Okay, congratulations. Okay. From our study throughout Kerala, mainly from Technopark and Info Park, what we have seen, the work-life balance in IT, mainly in the IT industry, I think the top level in the index is with Fracoman. So I know workmates, whatever, if you are not, your employees are not completing the work, they don't have to take home, they have to complete here itself. Maybe next day they can complete. So work-life balance is excellent there. So without affecting the productivity and profitability, how you are achieving that? What is the magic you are applying for that?
Thank you.
You got that pen?
I'll try to answer again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the feedback on the CSR again. We are proud to be associated with various programs here, and I think we as a team work together to make sure that we make a difference in the community where we are existing. Again, as an organization, again, I follow the role model of Vineet Nair, who said that people first. Again, my personal background is HR. I came into business by accident, and for me, everything it's human relations and taking care of the human resources of the organization was my responsibility in my previous organization. So everything I did was focusing on the people around me and empowering them to do their best. So if you ask me, people ask me, are you busy? I would say I'm not busy, because my second line is being empowered to take all of the decisions what the organization would need, and if at all they need my help, they only consult me. And the teams around that are able to, again, perform because they've been given independent responsibilities. Today, again, one of the biggest things which we would need to also think about is how do you build a culture in the organization where you encourage productivity and performance within the organization. There's a lot of programs which we have built internally to make sure that the employees bring in their best performance in the organization. Again, the average age of our employees in the organization is less than 25. Again, it's between 20 to 25. So if you look at the average age, if you take me out, obviously the group of people is 22 to 25. So they need a lot of variety for the kind of work which they are doing. And that's the kind of opportunities which we are continuously looking for, where they would need to learn and need to grow within the organization, and they're impatient. Unless you are able to provide them opportunities on an ongoing basis, learning on an ongoing basis, you would not be able to retain them. So again, there is nothing like a magic formula there. Providing opportunities to people is what I would think is now what we are focusing on, and it's not within India. Again, outside India as well. Again, I just wanted to also say that when we try to look for higher opportunities, irrespective of how indispensable they are within the organization in India, we would try and provide the best resource to an external office of Fragment, our best resource, and all of the others within the organization see that performance is being rewarded, irrespective of your closeness with the leadership or what you have done. If you have performed in the organization, you get the best opportunities which comes in within the organization. So that's something which we have been focusing on all through.
We could take one more question if you have.
Good afternoon, right here. First of all, I thank the esteemed panel for the wonderful insights. I am Ashutosh Karandikar. I head global sales for Suyati Tech. My question is specifically around the scale challenge. Going back to the analogy which Sanjay used on the base camp front. If a startup moves from a startup phase to a professionally run enterprise, startup phase where typically the founders or the leaders are pretty much hands-on or more or less a top-heavy team, and it moves up into a professional phase where it's base-heavy or bottom-heavy, but the people are entrenched in the organizational values. They have a psychological contract with what the values organization defines. From that phase, when we want to have an accelerated growth towards a much larger, enterprise ambition, how do you strike a balance between hiring the leaders who may be from the outside, may not necessarily understand the values, but you may need the direction or the ownership or the delegations coming in, versus the bottom staff who's entrenched but may not necessarily be aware of the changes that need to happen for the scale up, the next level of scale up. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very tough question, I must say. It's not easy at all. I think the transition. In fact, if I may take an example, I was speaking about something similar with a company whom I mentor, and I was telling the founder that it's like having an oak tree, and it's like grafting a new branch into an oak tree. So there is a lot of bark on the outside. You have to remove the bark. You have to sandpaper the oak tree, and then you have to, make the graft successful. So, my sort of 2 cents on that will be that I think the founder of such an organization which is making that transition, he or she plays a very key role in this process. I think the founder and maybe a couple of key people who have been with the organization while it was growing from ground up need to get to a recognition that in order to scale, in order to move to the next orbit, escape velocity, like Mr. Sunny Varghese mentioned today, you have to have that sense of purpose, that sort of clarity of the goal, but you also have to understand what are the strengths the existing team has and what it's going to take, like the Basecamp example. If there are going to be new Sherpas and new equipment, you have to understand, and the existing loyal team has to recognize that this is for the good of the organization, and with the injection of this new senior talent, the organization will grow much faster, it will grow much larger, and for the entire existing team, while there may be a loss of transmission in terms of closeness to the founder, the entire group of that existing team will be much better off. They will have much more opportunities to grow and to get promoted and to do much better in the long run. So there is an organizational change element, there is a culture element, but I think the key lies with the founder and a couple of existing team members who have to sit down, understand that, and then make it happen.
Thank you, Sanjay. I think one of the unique thing which Shilen had to go through was the scaling down part or transitioning part into being acquired. Shilen, a few experiences in that, if you can share.
Yeah, I call it in, in Hindu mythology, they have got 3 gods, top gods, like you have got Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So like even the management also has got this 3 paradigm, like to create something you need to have a Brahma mindset. To sustain something you need to have a Vishnu mindset, and to transform or maybe cut down because you need to have a Shiva mindset. Okay, so all these 3 has different competencies, and if you see the some of the say sometimes you may hire a CEO to downsize the company. So that is very common, especially in the US. Okay, so these are 3 different skill sets, 3 different types of experiences. So I've gone through all these 3 phases, and what I would say the most toughest thing was to scale down. Okay, and this need to be done. Sometimes in certain scenarios you have to done. So, and one thing which I learned is that in you will have all sort of predictions, of some people, like based on their experience, their thing with me. And in my experience, what I've seen is that most of your predictions go wrong. Okay, so you will expect a certain person to behave in a certain way. It never happens like that. So it has been I would say out of all the 3, the what you call the transition part, which means that you are cutting down the operation and then transitioning that to a different entity. There are a lot of change management things which has to go through as to ensure that the whole production remains seamless without much of an issue.
Thanks, Shilen. I think one of the things which we are going through these days is all the introduction of the social media changes. Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, anything. And I think building an organization, we have to build with all the new technology in mind as well. Maybe an area of interest to most of the people also. Anything you want to share about building in those, thinking about the social media and everything else?
Yeah, we are in the legal back office space. Again, if you have noticed, most of the IT and IT services firms in India flourished, but then the legal back office didn't pick up at all because the nature of the work is very, very personal. The attorney's advice is supposed to be very personal, and it cannot be transferred to India. So that was one of the reasons that the legal back office didn't flourish in India. But for us, being a captive unit, the parent organization had a lot of faith in moving work to India. That's one of the reasons that we were able to grow in India. And as part of this growth, we also looked at some of the robotics and AI initiatives within the organization. And that was required because we had to show productivity gains year on year, month on month. And that challenge was always there. Irrespective of what background you were in, you had to embrace the change which was coming in. So as part of that, we looked at some of the robotic initiatives internally where most of the forms, the government forms filled by employees in India, again our staff, on all the government sites around the world. There's something called a labor condition application which is required to be filled for any employee who travels to the US on a work permit. And in a year, we would do roughly 30,000 LCA applications at the government site in the US. And it was accessed by local employees here in India and manually filled where there's close to 120 to 140 fields which was filled in. We had automated all of these processes where finally the robot starts picking up all the information from our internal systems and it's filling the government sites in the US, which was unheard before that. And these kind of initiatives was not even known within the firm. And once they realized that there is an opportunity to automate all of these government forms, we started getting a lot of respect with respect to what we have been able to contribute to the growth of the organization. That was on the robotics side. On the AI side, artificial intelligence, for every visa submissions in any part of the world, there is something called a support letter, which would be roughly 40 to 50 pages of justification on why a person would need to travel to a particular country to do a particular job. Today, we are trying to automate all of those support letters through an AI program, which would, where the human interface would be very limited, so that the activity would be much faster and you get accurate output out of it. So these are some of the initiatives we are looking at internally. The reason is that it's, again, I'm sure with the offices spread around the world with 40 countries, it would not have been possible for you to do that. But now that all of these processes are under one roof, which is being done out of Kochi, it's much easier for us to automate all of these processes, which would not have been without the Kochi operations.
Thanks, Saju. I think we are run out of time. Maybe one last question I can take from the audience if anybody has a question. I think I'll wrap it up. I think very good points, all of them. One thing we tried our maximum was to tell a few stories in this topic. The story about climbing Himalayas, how to build an organization was pretty nice, Sanjay. And of course, from Shilan, you'll hear stories like Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And I think those are things I think you need, easy to understand actually, how to really build organizations. And small is sweet. I heard that from multiple people. And multiple clients and distributing your risk and managing risk is something you need to do. And of course, Saju mentioned about being people first always. And I think those are our learnings actually from what I could take from my notes actually. Hope all of you have picked up something about how to build new organizations. I think we kind of managed to keep people all awake if you look at people. So thanks a lot for listening to us. Hope you had a good time.